2, 1. Hello and welcome to our new episode on the Fantasy Football Fellas. It is me and Tyler. Tyler, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm happy it's another Tuesday.
Yeah.
I know Tuesdays are Lucas's worst day of the week, but when you talk fantasy football every Tuesday, I mean,
you gotta love it.
You gotta love it.
Lucas isn't here, so he can't rain on our parade. And so that's just kind of that's where we're at. Lucas is enjoying the sun in California.
Oh yeah. It was the warm weather and the distant fireworks for the 4th of July.
Flexing with some videos. We all saw that, Lucas. We saw that subtle flex.
The subtle flex of Starbucks.
Seeing it right through you. Well, Tyler, we're really excited about this episode and the next one. And why are we so excited?
We're going through another mock draft, baby.
Yeah, mock draft 2.0.
Heck yeah.
We're taking a little break from our divisional breakdown to go over a mock draft. This time we're going to focus a little bit more on our strategies.
Absolutely.
And why we took certain players as before we were diving really in deep in like the stats on each player to justify that pick more. Now we'll talk about why did I take a running back here? Why did I reach for this guy here? So that's how we'll do it. Lucas drafted with us, so we will still briefly talk about his picks. We probably won't go into as deep about his picks just because we can't do it as much justice as he did.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll jump right into it. So the draft order was Lucas had the second pick, I was at 4, and Tyler was at 11.
11, yep, in a 12-person mock draft.
Yes. And we did it on the Sleeper app. So we had Tyler and Lucas both on the turn, so that did make it a little interesting just because you guys were actually just on opposite sides of the board.
Yep.
And then I was kind of right in the middle. So Lucas got really lucky with his first pick, I think.
Yeah.
He managed to snag Christian McCaffrey, who we all love Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
But we still think even if McCaffrey has a down year, he's still going to outscore Dalvin Cook by 3 fantasy points a game. I mean, the dude is just ridiculous. He's averaged like 28 points a game for the past 2.5 years or something crazy like that.
Sounds about right.
So he got incredibly lucky. He wrote there's a 1 to 5% chance this happens in your draft, but he was very happy. Then I went to the 4th pick. At the 4th pick, I'm thinking running back here still. It's still way too early. And I decided to go Alvin Kamara. This is a dude who's had 1,500 yards from scrimmage each of his first 4 years, 80 receptions each 4 years, 10 plus touchdowns in 3 of the 4 years. So he's my clear-cut running back 3. So to give him at 4, I was very excited about that. Then we dropped down to 11. Tyler, who did you take at 11?
Yeah, so at 11, the 2 players that really came down to for me was Aaron Jones and Travis Kelce. And the only argument that I had for Kelce was that my tight ends are set then for the rest of the draft, right? Where I could focus on the one other questionable, I shouldn't even say questionable. The one position that I really needed to look out for then after was my quarterback. But I could not pass up the opportunity to take Aaron Jones, who will most definitely be a top 10 running back.
Yes.
And basically that was the only reason why. I mean, there's a whole Rodgers talk. If he leaves, what happens in the rankings for him and stuff. I think he is just that good that he stays in top 10, even if Rodgers leaves. So I could not resist taking Jones at 11.
Well, we didn't have a real hot take tie this week, but that might be pretty close. Rodgers staying in the top 10.
Ooh, so possibly.
Also, just to let you know the draft board. So it went Cook, McCaffrey, Henry, Kamara, Saquon, Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott. The first 8 picks was all running backs, and then it went Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. So that's kind of where Ty was picking. And so after Ty, it went DeAndre Hopkins and Stephon Diggs on the turn, and then back to you, Ty.
Yeah, and so with this second pick, then the more mock drafts I do, the more I realize I really need to take 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds. Unless it is a pass catcher if I'm later on in the second round, right? If it's a DeAndre Hopkins, a Calvin Ridley, that's really the only 2 guys I can make an argument for. then I would take a wide receiver and then just have to find another running back later. But when I'm that early in the second round, I would much prefer to get another running back.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I took Austin Eckler. And I think there's some doubt with Eckler and how much he'll produce this year with a new offense and just his value really just coming from being a pass catcher and not really much of a runner. But I want to believe that they will incorporate Eckler into their game plans.
100%.
He's that good enough to not just, be a decoy or anything like that. So with taking Eckler, my running backs are set for at least a couple more rounds.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, you have nothing to worry about then. Eckler was our consensus running back 10. So getting 2 top 10 running backs is huge for your fantasy team. Especially after those top 4 wide receivers go. Because they're really the only guys that we're for sure on. So then after Eckler went DK Metcalf, Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, J.K. Dobbins, which I don't think any of us would have taken that high. That's a sleeper pick. Cam Akers, the guy I wanted in Joe Mixon, who I was very upset went 1 pick before me.
When you not want Joe Mixon?
And then I came up next. When I came up, I had the option to take my next wide receiver on the board was Keenan Allen, who I actually decided to skip over and try and go Calvin Ridley to try, because I knew Calvin Ridley would go a lot earlier than Keenan Allen. So I was kind of trying to game the board to see if I get Keenan Allen to fall back to me. The other running backs on the board were the Antonio Gibsons, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They weren't guys that I was super excited. I would rather have one of those top, to me, 7 wide receivers. So I took Ridley here. Ridley was unbelievable last year without Julio Jones. I mean, he was in that wide receiver 1 category the entire time.
He was dynamite.
He had 143 targets, 1,300 yards. So that was why I took it. And when I'm looking at my tiers, Ridley's a tier above where that Antonio Gibson and CEH fall. I think Gibson can be really good this year. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But if it wasn't Joe Mixon, then I was going wide receiver. I have Keenan Allen higher, but I tried to kind of play that game. So then Lucas came around on the turn with his next pick. Actually, after me went A.J. Brown. Then Lucas took Michael Thomas here, who I know he was very excited to get. He's a wide receiver 7 on his board. Lucas did the same thing as me, actually. He had Michael Thomas behind Keenan Allen.
Yep.
But he knew Michael Thomas would go earlier, so he tried to play that game. Lucas he thinks that Michael Thomas is in for a great bounce back year, and I agree with him, and I think you do as well.
He's easily I don't think comeback player of the year is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
He was the most I think it was him and Devontae.
Yeah.
They were the top 2 most dominant receivers in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Then he missed all of last season.
Yeah.
So
He was never healthy.
Yeah. So I've heard people say, we all saw the real Michael Thomas last year. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
He was hurt last year. We all know what Michael Thomas can do, and he's a top 3 wide receiver at his best. So I don't hate the pick at all.
No. So then when Patrick Mahomes, DeAndre Swift, and Lucas came back, and the plan worked out well for him. He got Keenan Allen. He took Allen just because he knew McCaffrey can kind of cover up any running back depth that you miss out on.
Yep.
Keenan Allen was wide receiver 7 in points per game, wide receiver 6 in receptions, wide receiver 5 in targets, and he was also very happy to take Keenan Allen from me. And so that really went into his pick, and obviously that should go into all of your picks, is trying to screw over your friends when they get later in the draft.
Yep. I mean, I had Keenan Allen last year. I don't remember who traded him to me, but it's to have Michael Thomas and Keenan Allen as your wide receivers, and you already have cover in your running back
with
for
McCaffrey. Oh,
you do need to continue drafting, but your draft is pretty much set.
Yeah.
You're in a great spot if you get those 3 guys on your team.
Definitely. So then it came back to me. It was Antonio Gibson, who I actually wanted again. So I missed out when I took Ridley. The 3 guys that I wanted to come back to me were Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, and Antonio Gibson, and I got 3. None of them. So I was very disappointed coming here. I sat here for a little bit to think about it. I thought about Kittle. I thought about Najee Harris. But I had to go Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I know he was disappointing. Mm-hmm. But before Le'Veon Bell came in Week 7, he was running back 6 in that offense.
I was gonna say he was a very good running back.
Very good. And so I believe that's going to continue. It was just a weird year with no offseason, but that is such an amazing offense. Kareem Hunt, let me pull up the stats. Kareem Hunt had averaged 19 points per game as running back in Kansas City the 2 years that he was there. 19 points per game. And I think CEH, I don't know if he gets up to that, but he can definitely sniff it.
Yeah, he will definitely sniff it.
And so that was what had me excited about CEH. And so that's why I took him there. I really like having 2 running backs early in the draft. I hate leaving round 3 without 2 running backs just because the depth just drops off so quickly at running back.
Yeah, and your pickings get real slim too. I mean, if I didn't take Eckler in round 2, my only choices would have been Chris Carson or Myles Gaskin.
Yeah.
And you never want to play that, well, maybe I'll get him, and you don't want to bet on anyone else not taking them because everyone's looking for running backs.
Exactly. So. And so the next player off the board, Najee Harris, then we went back-to-back tight ends with Kittle and Waller. Then Mike Evans, the guy who should not have been picked here, Miles Sanders. Then we had Julio Jones, and then Ty's pick of
Allen Robinson. And I have to say, this is an absolute gift of a pick, knowing that Mike Evans, Miles Sanders, and Julio were the 3 picks before Allen Robinson. Now, in one of I think in our NFC North breakdown, my hot take was that Allen Robinson finishes as a top 5 wide receiver.
If field sees the field.
Yep, if field sees field sees the field. Yep. And I think for the 3rd round and as my wide receiver 1, I think he is a wide receiver 1. A lot of people will say he's a wide receiver 2. That's just because it's Andy Dalton under center. I think at least so. I was more than happy to take Allen Robinson as my wide receiver 1.
And he had Mitch Trubisky throwing him the ball last year, and Nick Foles, was that who the other guy? So it's not like he had amazing quarterback play the last 2 seasons. Like, it's been shoddy quarterback play at best, and he still put up crazy numbers.
He's still putting up top 10 wide receiver numbers, so you continue sleeping on Allen Robinson. I'll gladly take him for you guys. I'll do
And so after Allen Robinson went Lamar Jackson, the 2nd quarterback off the board, and then Terry McLaurin, and then back to Tyler.
With Amari Cooper. Man, I was getting absolute gifts at in the first 4 rounds, knowing that I took got Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler. Then I had Allen Robinson after Evans, Sanders, and Jones. Then I had Lamar and Terry McLaurin go ahead of Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
And I think when Dak is healthy,
yeah,
Amari Cooper is one of the best wide receivers in fantasy football. I mean, within the first 5 games last year when Dak was playing, Cooper was averaging 10, 11 targets a game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's to get him in the 4th round. Yeah. That is insane. That is insane.
All I'm saying is you didn't put your money where your mouth was and take CeeDee Lamb here.
Hold on.
That's what I saw. That was what I was.
Here's what I need to clarify. There's a small chance that CeeDee Lamb finishes above Amari Cooper. And I was just saying it for, reactions or views, as they say on many platforms. So do I stand by it? Not really. But if you take either CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper, that's not a bad pick whatsoever.
For sure. And then went a little running back spree of Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Chris Carson, then DJ Moore. And then we had Kyler Murray and Josh Allen, 2 more quarterbacks off the board. I was sitting here really questioning this pick. And I ended up going with Kenny Golladay, who's my next wide receiver off the board, who I am the highest by a lot on, since I have him at my wide receiver 12. So that went into it.
You bumped him up to 12?
That's where he's been. He's been sitting
at
12.
I thought he was at 14.
No, he's been sitting at 12 for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he was the 17th guy to wide receiver off the board. So for me, obviously, that's where I'm taking him.
Yep.
He, in his one healthy season, he had 16 points per game, and he only had 70 receptions.
Only?
Yeah. So he's a guy who can put up points without always catching the ball. That's what I like about Kenny Golladay.
Yep.
Is he gets you a lot of points, but he doesn't need that catch the ball a ton, which is going to be good in that Giants offense versus crowded. So but the reason I went Kenny Golladay there is because I had gone running back, wide receiver, and there was no running back that I thought I could get there. I wasn't interested in taking Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson that early, and I didn't feel a need to take a quarterback, especially after those top 4 had gone.
Yep.
So that's why I went wide receiver there. After me went Russell Wilson, and then Lucas's pick of Robert Woods.
Bobby Trees.
So Lucas didn't love being in this spot. He really wanted another running back here since he's only had one running back, but there was just no other good running backs really left on the board there.
Nope.
And so he took a wide receiver, and Robert Woods finished as wide receiver 14 under Goff last year. He gets an upgrade, so he's thinking, you know what, I got a lot of upside with the 18th wide receiver off the board. So he's taking Robert Woods. Probably not his favorite pick, but it was the best available for him.
Yeah, and even later on in the season, if he wants to trade for a better running back, because he later takes a running back that I don't have a problem with as a running back too, but if he wants an upgrade as a, for another running back, Robert Woods is a great piece to trade off. And especially if you have, personally for me, I would trade either MT or Keenan Allen just because they have a ton of value, or they have that much more value than Woods. And you can get so much more back for one of those guys. But really any of those guys you can trade and get a good package for back.
Yes.
So
next one, Chris Godwin, who I think I actually would have taken in that spot just because I think Chris Godwin's got such a higher floor or higher ceiling than Robert Woods, but I think Robert Woods actually has a higher floor.
Yeah.
And then it went Thielen, and then back to Lucas. Lucas was in another tough spot here. Does he reach for Myles Gaskin, who is farther down on the sleeper board? He said he should have known that me and you were in this draft, and there was no chance Gaskin was going to get back to him. But he went Mark Andrews here in a tight end. What I don't hate in the 5th round, I don't love. I don't know if I would do it. He does like the security of having a tight end that you're never going to have to worry about it for the rest of the year. You don't feel like you have to trade for a tight end. But he did say that 502 was probably the highest he would ever draft Mark Andrews.
And I remember too, we've talked about Gaskin before and where we would take him, and I think we've all said like late 4th would be that range. And early 5th, and he's still on the board. My mind, without looking at the sleeper big board and getting fooled by it, my mind instantly goes, oh yeah, I take Gaskin in the 5th. But I can definitely see when you're in the middle of your draft and you don't see a player within that first 8 that you see.
100%.
I'm with Lucas. I don't hate the pick of taking Andrews in the 5th, but
it's a tough spot.
Yeah, it's a very tough spot.
So next one, Travis Etienne, and then I gladly took Myles Gaskin at 504. Myles, I have him at running back 22, so he's a low running back 3, but I really liked getting him, he's a low running back 2, and I really like getting him as my running back 3.
Yep.
Because once you start getting into that later running backs, it's just really hard to get any depth.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really wanted to get a running back here. There was decent wide receivers on the board still, but I figured there's a whole bunch of good wide receivers, like rounds 4 through 9 even. So I was like, well, I'm gonna take the running back here. So that was my thought process with that. Gaskin's just a guy who's very involved in the passing game.
Yep.
We still don't know how great Tua is, so hopefully he's still very involved.
Yep.
After me went Kyle Pitts at 5'5", Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham, Kareem Hunt, and then Tyler, you had your pick at 5'11".
Yeah, and I took the Broncos rookie running back Javonte Williams, and we're gonna split this into 2. First, Javonte Williams as a player. There's a ton of hype coming out about him in training camp and him possibly leading the team in carries this year. And, the Broncos traded up in the draft to get Javonte Williams. So there is optimism around Javonte Williams. But as it currently stands, it's not a guarantee that he's, a workhorse or the running back 1 for the Broncos. So taking him in the 5th seems a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Now, I already did have 2 running backs, so taking Javonte as a running back 3, I don't hate, but it's where I took him in the 5th when there were other running backs like Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds, and even David Johnson and Raheem Mostert. I would have probably rather taken them instead of Javonte, just because I know what I'm getting with those guys. But again, as a running back 3, it's not a horrible pick, but it's just really, really early for him.
Yes, definitely. But he does have a good ceiling, because if he comes out and he is that workhorse guy, he's going to get a ton of carries, and he's got a great skill set to be a 3-down back. So it's tough to pass up on him there and take like a James Robinson where that ceiling is capped right now.
Right.
But like you said, the floor is probably a little bit higher at James Robinson.
Yep.
So then on the turn went CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Smith, which gives Team 12 5 wide receivers and a quarterback.
5 wide receivers.
So hopefully that doesn't happen in a normal draft, but you never know.
Yeah, don't do that.
Then Tyler took a guy that I really wanted to come back to me, but of course he took him instead, and that is
Deontay Johnson. Now I know a lot of people have, voiced their opinion that they are a little hesitant on Deontay Johnson.
It's all those Chase Claypool truthers out there.
Goodness. If people start saying that Chase Claypool is going to be better than Deontay Johnson, I don't want to engage with that. I don't understand what it is about Claypool, but that's another time. That's another topic for another time. Deontay as a flex option for me, I think is amazing.
Definitely.
That sets me up with 3 really good wide receivers and 2 really good running backs and possibly a really good running back. So with 3, I guess 6 position players total, I can then maybe start looking at a quarterback or a tight end in the coming rounds.
Yes.
But really, Deontay was a no-brainer at this
for sure.
pick.
Then we went Dak Prescott, James Robinson, T. Higgins, Leonard Fournette, Brandon Ayuk. And then the guy I really wanted, Cortland Sutton, went 1 pick before me. This Team 3 had just been killing me. And I got kind of caught up in the sleeper big board here. I took a quarterback who I'm not upset about at all, and Justin Herbert, who I think can have an awesome year. But he's my quarterback 10 right now. That is because I do have Rodgers slotted ahead of him and Deshaun Watson, just assuming they're both playing, but that can obviously move. So maybe he moves up to running or quarterback 10. But guys on the board left were Tom Brady's, Jalen Hurts. So Tom Brady's probably the guy I would have taken here, who I just missed on. But like I said, I'm not upset about Justin Hurts. I think he's a guy who can definitely put up 35 plus touchdowns, 4,000 plus yards, maybe do a little bit with his feet. So yeah, I went quarterback here just because I thought about going Mike Davis. Was the only running back I was looking at, but I was like, I already got 3 running backs. Maybe this will be the first time I've really stretched for a quarterback. So I was kind of trying that out as well. Yeah. And so that was my thought process taking a quarterback here.
Yeah. And I wonder if Lucas would have ended up taking Herbert with one of these picks, just because he already has Keenan Allen on his roster.
Trying to stack.
Right. So if he can, I'm now realizing just how good a quarterback wide receiver duo can be for your fantasy team. You've got Herbert and Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray.
Oh, yeah.
Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper. Like, there's so many duos to get that if you can get one of them, you have, that's just a 100%. Great strategy to have. So
100%. Then went Chase Edmonds, and then Lucas snagged Mike Davis in the 6th round. He's a guy that I think we all really are high on just because of how low he is falling.
Yep.
It's not that we think he's going to have a top 12 year, but it's just he is falling so low in these drafts for a guy who's guaranteed starter minute or starter touches.
Yep.
Like, he's going to have good volume. He performed well in Carolina last year. Great in the passing game. So he's a guy that we really think is going to continue it. And those quads are unbelievable. So it's hard to pass up on Mike Davis.
Sorry, say quads. Your time is up.
And so Lucas desperately needed a running back here going in the 6th round with only 1. Mike Davis is 23. He was 1 spot behind Gaskin. So to miss out on Gaskin or to not take him in round 5 and then get the running back to give the next spot down in round 6, I think he's really happy about.
Yeah. And I will say this too, when you're drafting like your first starters for running backs and wide receivers, personally, I try to avoid the players in the same division, right? So like Lucas now has Christian McCaffrey and Mike Davis, and I'm not criticizing Lucas at all. But
and Michael Thomas.
So whenever, since they're all within the same division, whenever they play, one of those players is not going to perform as well because one team is going to be winning, one team is going to be losing, right? It's going to work out in your favor. Let's say if the Panthers are beating the Saints, right? So the Panthers are just running out the clock, so they're going to use McCaffrey, and the Saints are going to be throwing the ball to Michael Thomas.
Yep.
That works out, but the chances of that happening are pretty slim.
Yeah.
So that's why at least I try to avoid the same division, but I can also understand taking guys like McCaffrey and Michael Thomas and Mike Davis just because they will get volume and they will produce with that volume. So
next one, DJ Chark and TJ Hawkinson, who fell to the 7th round, which is probably the farthest I've seen him fall so far.
Yeah, definitely.
A guy that I probably should have looked at a little more instead of taking Herbert there, but we digress. Then we go David Johnson for Lucas in round 7. David Johnson's a little older. He kind of had a flash at the end of last year,
He did.
but it's still tough in that Houston offense, especially if Deshaun Watson isn't there. That becomes really scary, and you got to be somewhat worried about Philip Lindsay, who has proven that he's a good running back.
I do not understand why Philip Lindsay is being slept on as a handcuff running back. I would not be surprised one bit if this team uses a running back by committee.
Oh yeah,
because
plays the hot hand.
Yeah. Because Philip Lindsay has shown he's good enough. David Johnson has shown he's good enough.
Lindsay's put up multiple 1,000-yard rushing yard seasons.
Yeah. So if you get either one of them, don't be surprised if Johnson falls off and Lindsay kind of takes over and they've kind of flipped throughout the season.
For sure. All right. Next off the board, we had Juju Smith-Schuster, and I reached down on the sleeper big board again and took Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is a guy that I'm really high on. I think he's going to be a fit into that wide receiver 2 category, actually.
Yep.
He had crazy stats last year, putting up 136 targets, 93 receptions with 1,100 yards. He only had 3 touchdowns. That's why his fantasy value wasn't as high. But touchdowns aren't usually a stat that sticks with, especially wide receivers when they have an extremely low one.
Right.
It's not like he's a guy that's never going to score touchdowns. He's going to put up touchdowns eventually.
Yep.
And he's got that connection with Sam Darnold that I think might give him a little edge over DJ Moore here.
Yeah, he was the first one that came out and said that Darnold looks like a whole new quarterback.
Exactly.
So Anderson still has some chemistry with Sam Darnold. So
I loved him here. He's my wide receiver 20. He was wide receiver 23 last season, and now you lose all those Curtis Samuel receptions, which some are going to go back to McCaffrey, but it's not like Mike Davis never caught the ball.
Right.
So a little bit will go to McCaffrey, but you're probably still talking about 50, 60 targets that are out there to grab. And when you already have 136, to get him in the 7th round, that made me really excited.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Then we had Jalen Waddle, Melvin Gordon, Aaron Rodgers, Raheem Mostert, Trevor Lawrence, Chase Claypool, and Tyler went tight end here.
Yeah, not the tight end I probably should have taken in the end. I selected Noah Fant with this pick. Like I said, definitely should not have been the tight end I took, especially with tight ends like Dallas Goedert. Logan Thomas, I think, was still on the board. Mike Gesicki. Those are all guys that I think I have above Fant. So, at least in my rankings.
Yes.
So, who should I have taken instead? Well, I have it all right down here because there's a lot. I should have taken Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Deebo Samuel, Curtis Samuel, Laviska Shenault, Michael Carter, and maybe even Damian Harris, just because there's some hype around Damian Harris from the Patriots camp. Yep. So I can hear all of the Tyler, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I said that exact thing to myself after I selected Fans, okay? I made a mistake.
This is why we mock draft.
Yeah, this is why we mock draft, so we don't make these mistakes later.
Yeah.
And I think this was partially also, a big, big goof of the sleeper big board.
Yes.
Because Fans is – I cannot accurately rate and rank this Broncos offense, especially with Cortland Sutton back. So I should have avoided fans here, but oh well.
Speaking of the Broncos offense, the next two guys were Kenny and Jake Brown-Jones, and Tyler went right back to the Broncos offense.
Right back to it. I went with Jerry Jeudy, okay? And literally, I think every single player that I mentioned before was still available at this pick. And in my rankings, I have most of those guys above Jerry Jeudy. And I think the one thing that I keep clinging on to with Jerry Jeudy is that he had 113 targets last year. Yeah. Granted, he was, second most in the league with drops and stuff, so that's an issue. But he doesn't have wide receiver 1 duties on him anymore. And from reports in camp, him and Teddy are really connecting super well still. So whoever it is under center, if it's Drew Lock or Teddy, he will get the ball.
And he can get open.
Right, and he will get open. So I think it's not the player that I hate here. It's just where I took him and who else was available.
For sure. All right, after Tyler went James Conner, Marquise Brown, Jarvis Landry, Tyler Boyd, Brandon Cooks, and Will Fuller, who I also really wanted. This Team 5 was killing
you.
Oh, everybody I wanted they took. I ended up taking Deebo Samuel. Tyler's really talked me into him. That's kind of where it's come from. Is he's a guy when he came back, he started really taking those targets away from Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
He has a chance to be that number 1 in that offense. It's just if he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
And I was looking, and I heard someone talking about Deebo Samuel's been hurt almost every year of his career since high school. So that is a little worrisome. Man. So you hate to label a guy injury prone, but when you've been hurt that much, it's tough. So if he's healthy, he's in a good offense where he'll catch the ball. He's an 8th round pick, so I kind of took a flyer on him there. We went Mike Gesicki next, and then Lucas took Tom Brady, who I'm really high on. I think quarterbacks do so much better. Bruce Arians' offense, their second year, and he was putting up ridiculous numbers year 1.
Yep.
And now he's going to have a healthy Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown for a full year, Gronk, Evans, Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette.
Don't forget O.J. Howard.
Howard.
He will still do something.
And so I think that's just a great pick right there. Brady's going to put up a ton of points.
Yeah. Well, and Brady also has one of the easiest schedules again this year. So,
how does that keep happening?
I don't get it. We need to call up Roger right now and just say, hey, what's happening here? But anyway, it's literally going to be a guarantee that Brady puts up 20 points or more a game. It's a guarantee. Yeah. So
that's just. And so, and for Lucas to get him as his quarterback 1 in the end of the 8th round, that's just a great value pick.
That's a good value.
So with that, we're going to conclude talking about our mock draft for now. We will finish up on our next episode on Friday, where we will go through the back end of the draft, and we will talk more about our sleeper picks with that. But we're going to get into our mailbag. And Tyler, let's hear our questions from our favorite followers.
Oh, gladly. Our first question comes from McLovin's bro, and his question is, do you think every team will eventually be a running back committee and the workhorse running back die off?
I don't believe so. When you have running backs like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry's, even Saquon, Zeke's, these guys are so talented that you're never gonna have a time where you're like, I would rather give it to this other guy. That's why you have workhorse running backs. It's because it's a guy where you're like 300 times a year, I want it in your hands, and that's it.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's a stretch to say every team will be a committee. I think there will be only a small handful of teams that will use
100%. Maybe 7 through 10 at most. 10 would be a lot going in the future, because that's just the way we're moving.
Right.
But I think at least 5 to 7 for sure.
Yeah, and I think the most ideal backfield that teams are looking for, I go back to the 2017 Vikings, where Dalvin was a rookie, second year maybe, and he tore his ACL or something like that, and he was out for the year. So the Vikings had to turn to Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon.
Yes.
I think teams are looking for the bigger downhill runner, complementary with the pass catching back.
Yes, the speed guy.
Yep, and I think we only see committees because teams are wanting to like give every opportunity they can give to a running back to have that kind of duo in the backfield.
For sure.
So I think there are some that will be design committees like you look at Chicago, you look at the LA Rams. Those teams have historically used committees, 49ers, and even Colts last year a little bit. So there are teams that that will design their offense around a committee, but I think more times than not, it's more so because they're searching for something else than it is just a exclusive committee.
For sure.
So that answers our first question. Yep. And the second question, I apologize. Do we have this user's handle on us?
Ooh, I can get it real quick.
We got it. We got to give him a shout out because this is a great question. So,
Dakota DAKOTAW 521. So I'm gonna go Dakota W or Dakota.
Dakota. Hey, shout out to you for this question. How much does draft position matter? And what's your favorite spot to draft in a 10-man and in a 12-man league?
Draft position, that changes how you're going to draft. You know, like the difference between Lucas and you was unreal. Like you were, I need 2 running backs right now because I'm never going to get another one. And Lucas was like, I can take McCaffrey and then wait on running back.
Yep.
So, it changes a lot. And that's kind of why, that's one of the reasons we love to mock draft is because you can see, all right, if I'm in 2, my draft position is very different than 7 because 7 I'm going to get kind of the middle of the pack everywhere. Yep. My favorite is probably honestly 1 or 2 just because then I get McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook.
Sure.
And I think they're just that much better than everyone else that like they're guys that you'll never be able to trade for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I view it is like I will never trade them and I will never trade for them.
Hold on, says the guy that sent like 3 offers a day for both Dalvin.
Oh yeah, and I never got them. But except for I did get cooked. But and then I think I also kind of like that probably 6, 7.
Yeah.
Maybe even 8. Like right at the end this year because I can get Zeke there and then get another like real high end wide receiver. Top 10 running back.
Yeah. Would you say that's both for 10 and 12s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way in terms of, what, the draft position that you have and how much it matters. It changes your whole strategy. Yeah. But the one thing that you don't need to kind of fall into is, I'm not going to find any value if I'm at the end of a round compared to the beginning of the round. You're going to find value at the beginning of the second round.
Yes.
So it's basically switched. That mentality is switched on a snake draft. But I think in dynasty and keeper leagues, yes, you're going to value your earlier picks way more than your later picks.
100%.
That's just naturally how it goes. And I'd say in my favorite spots in 10-mans, I'd say 6 or 7 range.
Okay.
You're still getting a very
tier running back.
Yep. And then you have your pick of the crop then on the turnaround.
Yes.
And then in 12-man leagues, I really prefer the 10 and 11 range. Okay. Because kind of this goes back to my strategy of 2 really good running backs.
Yeah.
That plays, I'm able to do that at 10 and 11 or 11 and even 12, right? Like I'm able to do that strategy and that's where I find my better team. So
for sure,
that's where I would go, but I'm going to be real, boastful real quick. Give me any position and I'll make the best team. So, Lucas even said it last week. So I'm sorry. Just had to say it.
Can we trust Lucas? Can we really trust Lucas?
Probably not. Probably.
That's exactly right. All right. Well, thank you for listening. We promise we'll get to the rest of the mock draft for you on Friday. We really appreciate all your viewership. That's the word I'm looking for.
Viewership.
Make sure to look at or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. And subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, go subscribe to us on YouTube. It's kind of sad to only know that it's really just us, the fellas, watching ourselves on YouTube.
Yeah, we're good-looking guys. Like you should want to see our faces.
Look at him, jeez.
So, all right. Well, with that, deuces, and we will see you on Friday.
Deuces. 39 minutes.
That's not terrible.
That's not bad. That's usually how it's. I mean,